justice systems. We seem to be having some form of leakage in the criminal justice system that begs for rather a reflections from Kenyans in general. And so with this case, it's a win situation for people like Rotich and those who are acquitted. But then it begs the question of public accountability to the citizenry. So I'm thinking of where now do the citizens go to ask, where is this money? Does it mean that the laws were not flaunted? Does it mean with this case, or rather with those who were acquitted, as it is seen and heard that there was malicious prosecution? It begs the question that for us, the taxpayers' money that was embezzled, where is it? Whom do we hold accountable?
Okay.
Yeah.
The big question is, who do we hold accountable? But engineer, in terms of a precedence at all, if we may look at the history of this country and the way we've handled corruption in the public sector, can you say it's been successful? It's now 60 years. We can, on a larger scale, they say we are still a young democracy compared to the major ones like the states and whatnot. But 60 is quite an old and mature country. Does the way we handle corruption cases, is it in sync with our age, simply put?
Actually, when I hear corruption in this country, and for someone who has been in private sector employment when I left university, and I have dealt with people in public sectors as well, I think that for the most part, corruption has generally become a way of life for some people. And because of that, perhaps that's why EACC was set up, because it had kind of become the norm. My reaction in the first place when EACC was set up was, it probably was a mistake. Why? You cannot make corruption lifelong employment for people. Some people right now know that you go to school, pursue whichever career, when you graduate, you'll go to EACC. Just like the case of the NGOs. If corruption has been understood to be a permanent source of earnings, it's a living, it's a way of earning a living, then perhaps you should have people generating it, have people prosecuting it, and generally it should not end. In my view, corruption or EACC should have been set up as a project, prosecute this thing for maybe 5 years, and then integrate those processes into all systems in government and private sector.
Okay.
That way, as a project, when a project starts, it has an end. There should be a goal. Zero corruption. It used to be the talk. I think right now we've raised that standard to some other level. And eventually we might just say everybody corrupt. Why? Because then it's a way of life.
Okay.
So if we do not do it as a project, in my view, it doesn't matter if we make some hits and misses. This is with us because we've set it up that way.
Okay. Wainaina, you're an advocate, and people in the law profession, yeah? You're a critical piece when it comes to this discussion and discourse. Even the way you describe to us, you have enough evidence to prosecute, then 4 years down the line, not enough evidence now, what exactly is going on? And I think engineers raised a very important point, saying maybe the establishment of Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission was a mistake, because it's sort of acceptance and institutionalizing corruption. On your end, did you think, because me I see it as a human condition, just accepting that you're going to have some bad apples in this basket, so you might as well set up infrastructure to deal with those. How do you take those sentiments?
Engineer sentiments?
Yes.
First, I think EACC performs contrary to public perception, because the role of EACC is more investigative. It's not prosecutorial. EACC has no mandate whatsoever to prosecute any case, no matter how high or wide the magnitude of corruption is. EACC has no duty to prosecute any case. Their duty is to investigate and initiate recovery measures. If you look at the structure of our governance, you will notice that our constitution imagined a situation where there would be institutions whose role and mandate would be specialized in a way, and that role and mandate, other institutions would be prevented from, creeping into the role of other institutions. So, for example, several judicial declarations have made it very, very clear that the role of prosecuting cases is purely with the Director of Public Prosecution. So when you take EACC, the best they can do is investigate, then take you to court, or rather take the file to the DPP, then the case is prosecuted. If the evidence is sufficient, they recover. And I think we've seen statements that this year we've recovered, let's say, 6 billion previously from the EACC. If you follow the anti-corruption court, which is the most boring court, you will find there's a lot of surrendering of stolen public properties. It is happening silently.
Okay.
And I think they are doing their job despite the limitations, because again, you would also look at how enabled is that institution in terms of resources. So for example, you ask yourself, how many investigators does EACC have? So that you can measure their performance based on the resources that they have been allocated and what they are doing.
Okay.
You'll be surprised to find that they have very limited capacity. On the basis of that capacity that they have, they're actually doing a good job. They're investigating cases, they are forwarding files to the Director of Public Prosecution, and their mandate ends at that point.
Okay.
They are having a lot of government assets being surrendered back to the state by individuals who had taken them. So EACC, for me, I think they are doing a good job.
Okay.
And so for maybe recommendation, there would be need to enhance the capacity of EACC in terms of the resources. We only need to look at the budget allocation of EACC in the previous financial year. And that will tell you that what is allocated to them in relation to what they have recovered much more than what is allocated to them. They don't have all those resources. If they had sufficient resources, such that you had an EACC probably office in every county or in every constituency or whatever place you're talking about, then we might see more enhanced recovery.
Okay. And Nelly, the big question I can even see here are the people daily. Where was it? It was well written somewhere there. Who dropped the ball? I don't know whether it's on the standard, but that was the question that a lot of people are asking now. If at all, EACC is doing its job, DPP, the whole value chain when it comes to dealing with this monster of corruption. First of all, do you think the institutions that you've set up in place are well proofed to be able to do their jobs? That is one. And two, and using this case as an example, who's dropping the ball in this whole value chain that we need to call out?
So when you look at this case, or rather the corruption angle, it's been a long-standing issue that we've really grappled with. I mean, when you look at some of the happenings in this country, most of them are caused by corruption. It is the elephant in the room. We cannot dispute that. But I think for us as a country, I'm looking at it from an angle whereby we have an accountability deficit. We have institutions in place, people who have been mandated to do their job when it comes to leadership and governance, but there's the accountability deficit, there's an accountability aspect. And for us to really take up on this war on corruption, I'm seeing it as a political way. We need to take a political route to be able to sort the corruption in this country. And why am I saying this? I'm saying this because the buck stops at the leadership in this country. So who are we getting to these leadership spaces? And the people that we are getting to these leadership spaces, are they really accountable to the citizenry? Are they able to come out confidently to stand before people and say that you gave me this mandate and this is what I was mandated to do. So for that, this is what I've done. We don't have that.
Okay.
I'm looking at it as if we are to really fight corruption in this country, then it needs to start with a goodwill from our leaders, because at the end of the day, the buck stops with the leadership of this nation. As much as we would want to maybe blame the citizenry or rather take it to the citizenry and stuff like that, the buck still stops at the leadership of this country, because the citizens gave them the mandate to represent them.
Okay.
Yeah.
With the leaders, I know it's an interesting balance, because especially as you say, the political goodwill, it's very important, but also at the same time, we understand the politics of this country and the way people garner resources and the way you are able to operate. Like, honestly speaking, if you are just honest, you know, as part of you're the Miss President Narok County 2022, and that was a very small portion of thinking about how politics operate. And politics is brutal in this nation, just to be honest. And the way people have gathered resources in this country is very questionable. So expecting the very same people also to be at the forefront, I don't know whether we are being a little bit too ambitious, engineer.
Okay. Every country has had moments that they had to deal with the monster of corruption. I'm sure Singapore did. I know America continues to deal with it. And there was a time when it was probably the main source. Even some people argue that, for example, piracy in America was the biggest source of its development. Piracy is criminal. It was always criminal. But it was the source of its development. It passed. That phase we will not go back to it. America will not go back to it, because it will not allow it to come back. So I think our case here has to do with, okay, corruption, the way we know it here, has pervaded almost every part of our lives. Don't you think perhaps the best would be to say, by this date, this stops? Yeah, by this date, this stops. So we can start dealing with it, because there will still be other issues to deal with. We are developing.
Okay.
We're lucky that we're developing after many other people have. So there are lessons we can learn without going through the same mistakes.
Okay.
If we just borrowed some of those things and adapted them to our situation, the issue of corruption could be dealt with in a very short time. But because we always struggle to reinvent the wheel, create our unique Kenyan situation, think like we are special, even with corruption, we are special. No. Corruption is corruption. For example, public embezzlement of public funds is a crime. It was already covered by our law. But at the moment, it's being handled by EACC, largely. Why? It would, to me, it would appear like we have two resources that would be handling the same problem, dispersed. And now it's exclusive.
Okay.
That's just an example. There will be many other.
Mr. Advocate, on the panel, why is it better initially handled, or sort of this division of labor and creating systems to tackle this monster? Which one is more effective? Because you're arguing for the other linear approach to it.
It should be linear, and in my view, we should have reinforced the system that we had, and we would have still dealt with embezzlement of public funds. But right now we have it under EACC. Probably it could be done better, but if it's possible to do it better, it should end sooner. But it's not ending. If anything, the embezzlement is getting bigger.
Engineer, you're one of the most hopeful people that I've met, and it's a beautiful bonding to be very hopeful in this country. I really like that. And you've said we should come up with a date and say, you know what, by this particular day, it is zero corruption. We've decided as a country by February 14th, 2024 on Valentine's, we are stopping corruption.
Yes.
but
no, my argument is based simply on this.
Yeah.
The world moved away from handling things bureaucratically, as we do in this country. Bureaucracy can be minimized because the world has moved to project basis. Most of what's happening in the world right now is done by projects. Corruption can be handled as a project.
Wow.
Start, finish, and then for that not to happen again, we must have reinforcement, system reinforcement, perhaps including new learnings. Our kids learn from the TV, from what they see, even in the press. How some of us have done this and become that.
So it's sieving into the national value system.
So it doesn't matter what else we tell them later on that this is wrong. The experience is that it works.
Okay.
So how do you stop that? You can't stop that by just prosecuting some people and putting them in jail and you hope this stops.
Okay.
Exemplary as that may be, it's not enough. In my view, what's enough is you are doing a total system
revamp.
Yes.
Project corruption. Chris, is the
I don't know. I am of a different opinion on matters corruption. I think one of the decisions that we made in 2022 election is a decision on what kind of a nation we want. And we had two alternatives that were on the table. On one side, there was a question of, do you want a country that is modeled after the European, the Western nations, in terms of structures, in terms of the way the countries run, yeah? We were being told, one of the sides of that election was arguing that the resources we have are sufficient if only we are able to recover what has been stolen. The other side did not make any promises on corruption. Fortunately or unfortunately, it's the side that won. So right now you cannot go and tell the president and his team to fight corruption. They never promised that. It's not in their manifesto. Let's start from that point. Yeah? And the reason that it's not in their manifesto, they know it better. But I think the decision that we were making that time, as citizens, we said we want a country that is fashioned after our image. And that image that is our image is a corrupt image. And I'll give you an example. Today, if you want to have a well-planned city. You know, the way the Western cities are well-planned and structured, you know, everything is functional. In Nairobi, your biggest obstruction will be the people, okay? Ask Sakaja, who is trying to get people out of the streets, the hawkers. You know, in an organized system, if you are to trade, you'd have to have a business premises. You get?
Yes.
But when you go to people and tell them that you cannot put your wares on the streets, you will be at crossroad with those people. Because they want a country after their image. And in their image is a country where you are doing business with minimal or no rules. You see, that's the kind of a country that we want. So if I am going to have my business on the roadside and I'm Mama Boga, what's your problem? Why do you want to get me into a market? Who told you I want to be inside a building to sell my sukuma wiki and all those other things? Me, I want to sell my sukuma wiki where there is a stage. Hapo chini.
Yes.
You get?
Yeah.
And that's what we said. We said in 2022, no. We've heard of those nations. We've heard the way they are organized. We've heard all those rumors from our relatives who are living in diaspora. They tell us how their systems functions. You, if you want that nation, go have that nation. For us, we want a nation where we are able to do our things. That's why we identify ourselves as hustlers, yeah? Hustlers don't own shops, don't want to, to pay rent, don't want to pay taxes. In fact, right now we are feeling offended. Because the very essence of hustling is whatever I get is mine. Why do you as KRA want what is mine?
Okay.
So there is just seem to be a system where corruption for us, we look at it at the top there. But in essence, we are the most corrupt people.
Okay.
The Wanjiku is the most corrupt person. Rotich and the rest of the people are just magnified. There is a magnifying glass which has just pointed at Rotich. Whereas the rest of us, if today you are arrested, before you are taken to the magistrate, what do you try first? To settle it out of court. And honestly, if I know where I'm going to prison, I would rather settle it out of court. I'm just being pragmatic.
That's the better approach.
Model.
Yes.
And that's Wanjiko's model.
Yeah.
And that's the model he said in 2022.
Okay.
This is the country that we want.
Okay.
So right now when you're saying that you elected these leaders and you're asking them to do what? The leaders we elected, we know all of them.
Okay.
We know who has a case against what. In fact, we told people point blank, we want the one who is being accused of murder, give us that one. The one who is being accused CG of eating money CG from where, that's the leader that we want. Who are you to tell us that there is an alternative leader?
Is it a Jesus Barabbas situation? We want Barabbas. And engineer, I'm going to bring you in. We are taking a break in the next few minutes. But Nelly, from the argument here, is it all hopeless now since Wanjiku is the corrupt one? This is just a reflection of who we are. Should goodwill come from individual Kenyans other than the leadership? Come to think about it.
I think the goodwill must come from both. And the reason why I'm insisting on the goodwill coming from the leadership is that, yes, as he argues, Kenyans agreed to vote in this government. There's a section of Kenyans that didn't agree to that. There's a section of Kenyans that still see that the government of the day needs to fight this, because as a government of the day, you are mandated, it's your responsibility to ensure that the welfare of the citizens are well taken care of. So it is still okay for citizens to ask questions. And if we are really to fight corruption in this country, then we begin from that point. Citizens start asking questions. If we get to see on the dailies or on the news that there's some embezzlement of funds, why should we sit and watch in the face of injustices? Why should we just sit and do nothing? So we start from that point. We start by asking questions. And whom do we ask questions? The people in positions, because they are at a greater positions, first with influence. Number two, they're the people mandated to be there, rather take care of the citizens' needs, to say so. So when you tell me if the goodwill needs to come from the citizens, I still argue that the goodwill needs to come from the leadership. If we have the president himself, yes, it was not part of his manifesto, but he's been very big and loud on how he wants to fight corruption. But whatever we are seeing and experiencing is quite different from what he has been speaking. You cannot say you want to fight corruption, but we are seeing people of questionable characters getting top-up seats and appointments in your government. It speaks different language.
Okay.
And that is where I still say that the goodwill, as much as we would want to have it come from the citizenry, it needs to come from the leadership, because they have that mandate to ensure that it is the citizens' right to be, there needs to be well taken care of. So once we start asking questions, then it rings a bell to the leadership that if we don't really handle this, then the citizens are going to come for us. Okay. So the goodwill needs to start from them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, you know, we have very nice cups there when it starts to get heated, yeah? Like right now, we're just scratching the surface of this corruption monster and the different approaches to it. Engineer, I know you have a very burning point, but that heat, we want to direct it to the tea as we go for break. Then when we come back, we start dissecting it even further. How we can be able to slaughter this monster called corruption. Is it, you know, a situation of hopelessness? We are corrupt as a country and as Kenyans. There is no hope.